The slim new Republican majority in the House is now trying to move on after last week's unprecedented meltdown with an incredibly weak Speaker, Kevin McCarthy, who has openly admitted that he's indebted to Donald Trump for his position, even though it was Trump himself who tanked the party in the midterms and gave him such a narrow majority. For more on this, it's time for a closer look. The new Republican majority in the House is finally getting to work after a week of paralyzing chaos in which a newly minted Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy, acceded, in fact, one could even say capitulated to the demands of the far-right extremists in the caucus. And just to give you an idea of how nuts the next 2 years are going to be with this crew in charge, one of the newly elected members of McCarthy's conference is Montana Republican Ryan Zinke, who was Donald Trump's first Interior Secretary, until he was forced to resign after a series of scandals, including a real estate deal, conflicts of interest, and a $6,000 round-trip helicopter flight to meet Vice President Mike Pence for an afternoon horseback ride. First of all, I'm surprised Mike Pence would ever engage in such an unnatural activity as horseback riding. Man and beast were not meant to consort in such a devilish fashion. Also, I can't imagine Pence riding a regular trail horse. He seems to have more of a dressage horse kind of vibe. I mean, have you ever seen him run? He prances like one of those stallions at the Olympics. I mean, look at him. Also, you guys, clapping while running is not a good look. He looks like he should be holding two coconuts, Monty Python style. I'm guessing this is what Trump had in mind when he sicked that mom on Pence on January 6th. He's faster than he looks, but the clapping gives away his location. Anyway, Trump's scandal-plagued Interior Secretary is now a member of the new GOP majority in the House, and when he took to the floor this week for his first speech as a member of Congress, he made clear that this new Republican conference is going to be pretty far out there when he claimed that a secret cabal of leftists is running the government from behind the scenes. Now, Republicans say stuff like that all the time, but Zinke had a different spin on it when he identified a new target that the leftist deep state is supposedly after.
I stand before you as a duly elected member of the United States Congress and tell you that a deep state exists and is perhaps the strongest covert weapon the left has against the American people. There is no doubt the federal government deep state coordinates with liberal activists and uses politicians and willing media to carry their water. The deep state runs secret messaging campaigns with one goal in mind: to increase its power to censor and persuade the American people. Dark money groups funded by liberal billionaires and foreign investors funnel money to shell organizations and repeatedly attempt to destroy the American West. In many cases, they want to wipe out the American cowboy completely.
You think the American cowboy is getting wiped out? Have you not heard about Yellowstone? This is the best 4-year run for American cowboys since it was legal to advertise cigarettes. Do you know how many people in America watch Yellowstone? Every single dad. And just a word to those dads, when you talk to your kids on the phone, you don't have to tell them every single time that Beth Dutton is a real number. Not that she isn't. It's just weird that you keep telling us and that you whisper when you do it, like you don't want mom to hear. Because, newsflash, dude, she'd trade you in for Kevin Costner yesterday. I'm sorry, I shouldn't be so hard on my dad. I mean, I get it. I'm a dad now, and as a dad, I just want to say, that Beth Dutton is a real number. But I'll give Zinke credit. The deep state wants to cancel cowboys as a new one. Usually they're like, the army is woke now, or the socialist mob is trying to cancel conservatives. But now I guess the idea is that the CIA, the FBI, and the Pentagon all get together behind closed doors with AOC, Antifa, and Bernie Sanders to plot how to eliminate cowboys. No one person should have a 10-gallon hat. When in fact 10 people should all have a 1-gallon hat. How many gallons does one hat need? 99% of the people shouldn't have 0% of the gallons. So that's a window into how unhinged the next 2 years are going to be with these loons in charge of the House. And it makes sense that Republicans have revived one of Trump's disgraced cronies because Kevin McCarthy himself is personally indebted to Trump. The drama that unfolded last week was essentially an extension of the ongoing GOP war between establishment Republicans and the Trump wing of the party. And the Trump wing won. In fact, after McCarthy finally crawled over the finish line on the 15th ballot by yielding, perhaps even relenting to the demands of the MAGA wing of his party, McCarthy openly thanked Trump for his support.
The fight that Kevin McCarthy is having right now is a continuation of the GOP civil war, and these conservatives are saying to themselves, well, we need to fight now, we need to put a marker down now, so that if he does pick up the gavel, McCarthy is not going to so easily acquiesce to everything that the Biden administration wants.
I do want to especially thank President Trump. I don't think anybody should doubt his influence. He was with me from the beginning. Somebody wrote the doubt of whether he was there, and he was all in. He would call me, and he would call others. And he really was, I was just talking to him tonight, helping get those final votes. And he was a great influence to make that all happen. So thank you, President Trump.
I actually believe that because the only thing Donald Trump is good at is making phone calls. Remember when he used to call into Fox and Friends and just ramble for a full hour while the host sat there frozen like they were watching Mike Pence run? Making calls is Trump's only skill. All he has to do is sit there in his pajamas in front of his television and ramble for an hour about toilets or windmills until the person on the other end of the call says, fine, I'll give in, I'll vote for Kevin. Just stop talking about how many times you have to flush. Incidentally, Kevin McCarthy needed the exact same number of ballots to become Speaker as the number of times Trump needs to flush his toilet.
People are flushing toilets 10 times, 15 times, as opposed to once.
See? 15 ballots, 15 flushes. No wonder these guys are best buds. Don't feel bad, Kevin. Don't feel bad. If it took 15 times, that just means you're a giant turd. Now, here's the crazy part. Trump is arguably the reason McCarthy was in this position to begin with. Trump and his cult of MAGA weirdos dragged the GOP down in the midterms. Without Trump, Republicans probably would have met historical expectations, and there very well could have been a red wave, as pundits were predicting. And if there had been a red wave, McCarthy would have had a much larger margin in the House instead of the tiny margin he has now, in which case he wouldn't have needed to spend 4 days begging and pleading with a small group of extremists in his party to support him. In short, if Trump hadn't wrecked the Republican Party, McCarthy probably would have only needed to run for Speaker one time, as opposed to
15 times.
And yet, by tanking the party in the midterms and reigniting a civil war within the GOP, Trump has somehow wormed his way back into a position of influence with the new Speaker of the House and his gang of bozos and doofuses, like Marjorie Taylor Greene, who has been calling for Joe Biden to be impeached basically since he took office. Greene, who is, of course, a Trump fanatic, will now be in a position of major influence in the House after she formed a close alliance with McCarthy and backed his bid for Speaker. And this week, she once again called for Biden's impeachment now that Republicans hold the majority in the House.
What do you think about the documents that, the classified documents that were found at President Biden's library from his time as vice president?
Oh my gosh, I think we need to investigate the Bidens nonstop. I've been very vocal in impeaching Joe Biden, and hopefully we can get that done this Congress.
Oh my gosh. First of all, it's funny to me that because she's in the majority now, Greene is trying to sound less like a wacko. She went from claiming wildfires are caused by Jewish space lasers to sounding like a shrinking violet from a Tennessee Williams play. Oh my gosh, well, I do declare that we must ever so kindly impeach Mr. Joseph R. Biden. Now, would y'all like a biscuit and a glass of sweet tea? Now, you've all heard about the Mar-a-Lago search that turned up stolen classified documents. Well, this week, we also learned that lawyers for Biden found a few classified documents from his time as vice president in a private office. They immediately notified authorities at the National Archives and had the documents returned. And then right as we started taping this show, we found out that Biden aides had found a second batch of classified documents at a new location, with NBC News reporting that the classification level number and precise location of the additional documents was not immediately clear. So we don't have all the details yet, and as they come out, we'll definitely discuss them. But so far, the two situations seem very different.
The difference here is that according to the White House, it was the president's legal team that reached out to NARA to turn over these documents, as opposed to with Trump, who fought for months and months not to turn over documents that the archive said needed to be turned over. The FBI said it obtained evidence showing that boxes of documents were being moved from a storage room where they were supposed to be kept. And that prompted the Justice Department to open an obstruction investigation and conduct the extraordinary search of Trump's Mar-a-Lago resort, where the FBI says they found even more classified documents.
So a few similarities, but mostly huge differences. Calling them the same is like calling both of these guys Olympic sprinters. When Biden's lawyers found the small number of documents, they immediately turned them over. Trump, on the other hand, kept refusing. The FBI kept finding more documents, totaling over 300, even after Trump claimed he'd handed them all over. He was even moving boxes of classified documents around for some reason, which is suspicious no matter what's inside. If I had a box that I kept moving, every time my wife asked me to get rid of it, she'd start to get curious, even though I clearly labeled it work stuff, not action figures I overpaid for on eBay. Biden voluntarily handed them over without even being asked. Trump, on the other hand, was given multiple opportunities to come clean and refused. And yet, that has not stopped newly empowered Republicans from equating the two situations in the dumbest way possible.
Why aren't they in there right now with subpoenas going through every single record there?
Where's
classified
the raid?
Documents. Right. Where is the raid? And let me.
Where's the FBI raid?
We have a quote here from Representative James Comer from the Oversight Committee who said, quote, "Is the White House going to be raided tonight? Are they going to raid the Biden Center?"
Monday night in a post, Trump asked, when is the FBI going to raid the many homes of Joe Biden? Perhaps even the White House.
The FBI doesn't raid someone who's already cooperating. FBI, we're here for the documents. Oh, yeah, we turned them in yesterday. Oh, okay. You seem bummed. Yeah, no, it's just, we put on our windbreakers and everything, and, would you mind? Is this dumb? Can we kick in your door? No, it is dumb. We're gonna go. The only way it would ever make sense to raid someone who's cooperating with the feds is if they're a secret undercover informant and you're trying to maintain their cover. But I don't think that's the case here because Biden would make a bad undercover cop. He's too loud, he makes too many gaffes. Hey, you guys doing a illegal drug deal here? I like illegal drugs. Why don't you guys sell me some of those illegal drugs? I'm not a cop, I'm just your average
American cowboy.
Of course. Even then, Biden would trip on the stairs and his secret microphone would fall out and he'd yell for back out. Scorpio, my cover's blown. Get me out of here. I'm on the 10th stair, 9th stair. 10th stair, 9, 8. For the next 2 years, we're going to have a narrow Republican majority led by a historically weak Speaker of the House, captive to far-right extremists and indebted to an ex-president who stoked an insurrection because Trump tanked the GOP in the midterms. McCarthy is now the most feeble speaker in modern memory. If not for Trump, McCarthy would probably be a much stronger speaker with a much stronger majority. When the extremists made their demands, he wouldn't have had to
acquiesce.
And he certainly wouldn't have had to do it
15 times.
This has been A Closer Look.